Hello and welcome back to opening night of Season 7 of Vintage Super League. I'm Reed Duke here with Kevin Cron. Kevin, you just had a pretty awesome match against Rich, featuring a game where both players balanced down to nothing and had to rebuild. How you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling like that matchup is one that I did not construct my particular flavor of bug for. I do wish I was playing your list in a matchup like that. Mine is much more geared to fight shops and outcome main and has serious issues with the simple Jeskai value aggro control deck.
What are the big differences in that regard?
The biggest one is speed. I'm on standstill rather than something like Preordain plus a mixture of Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. And then the other one is that I'm trying to get card advantage through just raw card drawing power via standstill and also sweepers. I've got Toxic Deluge and a main deck Engineered Explosives plus another in the side. So I'm trying to get my value in that kind of matchup by 2-for-1ing or 3-for-1ing them. And it's just really, really hard to do when I'm a little less consistent and they can just kind of one for one me and 2-for-1 me and win the long game.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, it is funny that 3 out of the 4 players tonight all showed up with Sultai, and actually all 4 of us are playing Null Rod, Stony Silence strategies. So we're not all exactly on the same page about what we should be doing to beat each other, but or maybe we are on the same page. Maybe that's the problem. But at any rate, why don't we take a look at the four deck lists and we can go through some pros and cons.
That sounds good.
This is the one non-Sultai deck. This is Rich Shay, who will be watching this round. He has, Rodrigo described it as basically Rich just took the old Jeskai Mentor deck and replaced 3 Monastery Mentors with, Seeker of the Way and Young Pyromancer, and here he has it. Definitely a lot of the same strengths of the old deck, but what do you make of this?
Well, that is exactly right. I would observe the fact that he has 3 Snapcaster Mages. I think one of the mentors became a Snapcaster there, which is very good in the value engine type fights that you get into in these creature aggro control matchups. Obviously, Pieces of the Puzzle is a fun addition, which was pretty good in our match. It found him Time Walk and Preordain, and
it came up that it
awesome.
cuts through Leovold's ability, which I'm sure will be big for Rich tonight.
Exactly. And what else do I notice? Seeker of the Way is obviously interesting, but a lot of the other choices are just metagame type choices. The Stony Silence that you observed, the 1 main deck Fluster plus 2 Pyroblasts means he's ready for the blue decks tonight, and he's going to be rewarded for that. And 1 main deck Mindbreak Trap, which was a nod back to Stony and the Silent Mentor, plus 1 main deck Fragmentize. So he's hedging a lot against outcome here and a little bit against shops, but it appears he's not expecting much workshop here this evening.
Yeah, and he was right. It is worth noting that we didn't know ahead of time which 3 players we would be paired in a group with, so it wasn't any kind of over analyzing that led us to these deck decisions. We were all just trying to choose a pretty reasonable, fun deck that had game against everything. And this is what Rich came up with. Here's Rodrigo's Leovold Sultai deck.
Oh, and he's playing the rare variant of Mental Misstep with Kurdave's art. I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So noteworthy here is the Green Sun Zenith package, which I think was discussed in the prior commentary, but it gets him access to not only Leovold, but Excavator, Manglehorn, and Trigon in the main, which is pretty fun. Not to mention Deathrite Shaman, which is pretty fun. Did you consider the Green Sun Zenith for your build?
Yeah, that was actually where I had started, and it was the thing that I liked most about the deck that drew me towards trying Sultai. But after playing a bit with it, I liked having a higher concentration of blue cards, and I didn't like... sometimes I felt like I was behind a resource if the game was very fast and I played a Tarmogoyf and I didn't get to fight over the card drawing spells. So all in all, I ended up just switching back to a more streamlined, like blue heavy version of Sultai. But Rodrigo was raving about Ramanop Excavator, and having access to the toolbox of creatures certainly does have its advantages.
I agree, and I consider the Green Suns for a similar reason. I have one Excavator in my deck in the main, and it is actually quite good. It's just when you're trying to 2-for-1 people in your blue-based matchups, it's really, really powerful to be able to get back creature lands or wasteland effects, and otherwise you can just pile on the shuffle effects with your Brainstorm plus Jaces. So I think Excavator has a place these days.
Yeah. Well, the players are ready, so let's go down to the match. League, we're watching Rodrigo Togores against Rich Shay, Sultai versus Jeskai.
Both players appear to have a nice mix of mana and spells with early plays on both sides. Rodrigo's mental misstep is going to be working overtime against these two plows.
Rodrigo's hand just looks, totally fine, about as good as you can get without having an Ancestral Recall or a Black Lotus. Rich's hand is very reactive. How do you usually feel when you open on a hand like that in Vintage?
I don't feel great, especially in his kind of archetype. He really wants to press the advantage with at least one threat. He's hoping that he gets to misstep something very early so he can snap back the misstep again.
Mm-hmm.
Rodrigo is unhappy to see this Null Rod in his opening hand for this matchup, but now that Rich has deployed 2 of his 3 Moxen, he might be having second thoughts about how good it is.
Yeah, it could actually be perfect having Strip Mine and Null Rod to shut off 2 Moxes. He might be on the unusual mana denial strategy, which is certainly not the first thing I would have thought of looking at the deck lists here.
Yep, the Null Rod is usually the first thing you want to put back in this kind of matchup, but this game it could turn out right. And Snuff Out, which is very weak against our other bug opponents this evening, you and I, is an all-star here in this matchup.
So I like that Rodrigo responded to the Pyromancer with Brainstorm, just in case a mental misstep battle occurred. He gets to have it before the young Pyromancer is spitting out tokens.
Exactly. So he's going to snuff here first when he has multiple options vis-a-vis Null Rod, Time Walk, and Leo this turn. So when there's no response to the snuff, you have to assume that there's no Flusterstorm wouldn't have been a great play there. Rich might still have a Fluster and have just immediately decided it wasn't the right play. But now Rodrigo has to respect Pyroblast, but it looks like he's just going for it with Leo. And he'll be rewarded with a card at least.
Yeah, I think I like doing that. Well, you can. I mean, if you play the Null Rod, you might not be able to cast Leovold for a while, and playing the Time Walk doesn't necessarily get you anywhere real fast. So better to save it for later or to save it to pitch.
Specifically, he knew the top of his deck, right? We just noticed that he drew Strip Mine off of Leo, so he put that Strip Mine on top. He knew he wasn't going to get there if he walked.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, so Rodrigo has set this up in case Leovold didn't survive either way. He's planning on Strip plus Null Rod next turn, which could be a powerful swing, but here comes that second plow, unfortunately. He's still set up for a good turn next turn. Null Rod, Strip Mine, Deathrite. It's very disruptive still.
Oh, but that's not the draw he wanted.
He definitely did not want his second Mox.
So the players actually pretty equal on resources here. The Leovold wound up being a 3-for-1 by drawing 2 cards off 2 Swords to Plowshares. But Rich got a 2-for-1 in Snapcaster Mage, and Rodrigo 2-for-1 himself with Force of Will. So when the dust settles, the players both have very little and are pretty even on resources. It's going to be a Snapcaster and a Tundra against 2 lands.
Unfortunately for Rodrigo, he's already spent his Brainstorm this game, so it's going to be Jace the Mind Sculptor or no to make use out of that jet. Oh, Leo
no.
would be incredible upon this board if he could cast it.
everything working out as badly as possible for Rodrigo. However, if he can play the Leovold before Rich finds a second island for Gush, that'll still be big.
Oh, force of will. Rodrigo tantalizingly away from good plays. Rich has drawn mono blanks since the strip mine plus null rod. If Rodrigo can pull a land here that casts Leo, okay, misstep will help if they get into a fight over Leo. Ooh, that's bad. That's bad for Rodrigo. Now Pyroblast and Gush are online.
So how would you time your Gush here if you were Rich?
Well, it looks like he's going to be simply playing it next turn, depending on what he draws, because I expect Leo plus Pyro plus misstep here to result in Leo resolving. We'll see what Rich draws, but main phase Pyroblast, well, Gush plus Pyroblast on Leovold is probably going to be the result, unless he draws something especially relevant. I would not Gush right here. Yeah.
Okay, you wouldn't Gush in response?
Well, no, because the best case you're going to get is, I guess, what he got, which is Force of Will, but you're still 2-for-1ing yourself. I'd rather have those lands in play and 2-for-1 myself by Pyroblasting Leo on my main phase. Because then perhaps Rich could follow up with another threat also. This way he's lost a mana in the untapped Tundra this turn, which he can't get back. See, Seeker of the Way. Now, granted, he wouldn't have drawn... Oh, no, he would have drawn exactly Seeker of the Way off of his Gush just now. Imagine how much better this turn would be if he could play Seeker of the Way as well.
That's true, yeah. It would have worked out much better. Maybe he was worried about Rodrigo having a second mental misstep or Force of Will, and, you know, the logic of if the Leovold, if I can't get the Leovold off the table, then I'll never be able to Gush.
Oh, wow, this Excavator is really powerful here with Strip Mine in the graveyard. Yep, Rich has to respect that. That might have been game. Granted, Rich has outs in the form of Swords to Plowshares and possibly other things, but that might have been the turning point of the game. Excavator being a 2/3 is just so comically relevant in Vintage these days. I love it.
I think we're going to see a very unusual end to this game where neither player really pulled ahead in the game, but Rodrigo's life total has just been dwindling, and now he's at 2 against the Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, you're right. There it is.
Wow.
Sure enough. Just enough tempo for Rich Shay to seal the deal. Those 2 Pyroblasts that he drew looked awful until he could cast them, and then they turned into All-Stars against Leovold. That's one of the interesting tensions in this matchup, which unfortunately favors the Jeskai deck heavily, and that is how good Pyroblast matches up specifically against Leovold. You can fight Leovold on the stack and they don't draw cards, and even if Leovold resolves, it's just the most efficient removal spell against him.
Pyroblast is really, really good right now.
Very. So Rich, you can see, is stacking up the cards he wants to get rid of, I believe. It looks like a 4-for-4 trade. Getting rid of Fragmentize, Stony Silence, 1 DAC, and Mindbreak Trap, which all sounds very reasonable. Dak Faden's still decent in this matchup, of course, but I think he valued his other sideboard card better, which I wasn't able to see in time. Ooh, how much do you like this JVP draw for Rodrigo?
I mean, I like it. I like it especially because of those 2 Wastelands. Being able to get ahead and then stay ahead potentially with the Wastelands is pretty appealing. Though this Jace is just going to be the Swords to Plowshares, I think.
Yeah, how many 1-mana answers does Rich have in his list? Probably upwards of 5.
Yeah,
maybe
it
more post sideboard.
Looked to me like 6 or 7. 3 Pyroblasts after sideboard, and then 3 or 4 Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, so JVP is just not long for this world. Rodrigo's going to need a follow-up threat, although, as you observed, his Wasteland is pretty good here. Oh, well, that's certainly something. So what pops into your mind as a DT target here with Lotus and Wasteland in hand? You go straight to Jace the Mind Sculptor?
Yeah, that seems like a good bet. It depends what you think could be in Rich's hand. I mean, you could try to choose something that circumvents Pyroblast. That
list is pretty short. I would say Ramanap Excavator is about the only thing on that list as far as permanents go. Aside from Ancestral Recall here and now, but that's That's not a very good choice, I don't think, when you haven't even tested the waters for misstep yet.
Something like a Sylvan Library would be good. I'm not sure if Rodrigo has access to that card. You could just go for
right.
Ancestral. That's a pretty basic one, although you have to worry about mental misstep. Rodrigo doesn't have the delve spells to go for.
Yep. So I think we're looking at Excavator or Leo or Jace.
If you could choose any, if you weren't limited to cards that were actually in your deck, I would love to go for Necropotence here.
Of course you would. Of course you would. And it would be very good on this board in this game if it wasn't for the Force of Will in Rich's hand, of course.
Yeah.
Have you ever played Lotus Necro Waste Your Land Go?
No, I can't say that I have.
It's a special kind of feeling. Well, there's JVP. I'm sorry, Jace the Mind Sculptor, excuse me. And he has opted not to cast Jace this turn, valuing the Wasteland instead. He's rewarded with a basic island from Rich, but Rich is very much hoping to find a fetch or a duel here, and he finds Mental Misstep instead. Oh, Flusterstorm was ideal.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect here. So that will allow the Jace to resolve through Force of Will, and Rich will be really drawing to a red source of mana if he wants to stay in the game.
Yep. Rich is probably pitching Time Walk here since he needs to value Preordain to find more land if this Jace resolves, which it's about to. Now, we observed you on camera in the prior match upticking your Jace the turn you played it to protect against potential removal plus combat. What's your preferred mode of Jace here and now in Rodrigo's position?
I mean, when in doubt, just Brainstorm. I think it's just such a powerful ability, and especially against an opponent who can remove the Jace, you want to make sure you get as much value as possible. Now, a fair question is, if you had X-ray glasses and you could see Rich's hand, would you be trying to deprive him of red mana? I mean, I guess with the Preordain, probably just it's a little bit futile to try to Fate Seal. Yeah.
And given that we have deck lists at this point, Rodrigo knows that he doesn't have to respect Lightning Bolt, so the additional 2 loyalty is not really a factor. Rather, Pyroblast is the main threat here.
Rich found Mox Ruby.
Well, there you go. So Rodrigo gets his 2-for-1 still, but it's not what he wanted.
Yeah, and now Rich is going to be way ahead if he can resolve this Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, which it is online. He's got 7 cards in his graveyard and a basic island. Rodrigo has almost no way to disrupt that. Excavator is nice, but not nice enough.
It needed to be Leovold there, or a Green Sun Zenith would have been nice as well.
True. So if you're Rodrigo, you just noticed that Rich played Ruby but missed his land drop. You know that your Excavator can't disrupt his mana this turn, but he goes for the value play anyway. And since he has a Wasteland in hand, I won't be surprised. No, he played the other Wasteland. I guess he knows Rich has to respect the Wasteland either way. I might have personally valued the shuffle pretty highly right there. And then the thinning, the shuffle plus the thinning there, because I definitely don't want to draw any more lands in Rodrigo's position. Rich's Cruise is not that good, ironically. Strip Mine is decidedly undervalued in this situation.
Yeah, very unexciting. No source of blue mana, no source of white mana.
He's on Brainstorm next turn, but he has to be leery of whether or not that will be effective in the face of potential Leo. Oh, second Excavator. Okay.
If you're Rodrigo, would you just make the 2-for-1 trade of lands here?
Given what's in his hand, I would seriously consider it. There he goes. He's doing it. Yeah, because he's so far ahead land-wise. Rich hasn't demonstrated a way to remove the Excavator, and he just drew a second one anyway. So, Yeah, I think it's the right play.
And would you abrupt decay the Mox or play another Excavator?
I would have to study Rich's exile pile at this point to understand how valuable red mana is. He's played at least one Pyroblast this game. Was it 2?
I believe it was only 1.
Okay, so with only 1 Pyro gone, that Ruby's still pretty valuable then. Looks like that's what Rodrigo wants to. Oh, the Tundra off the top helps with the Excavator.
So now Rodrigo, I have to imagine, will start his turn by casting Excavator, and Rich will Force of Will, or maybe Brainstorm and then Force of Will. But
yeah.
In either
Rodrigo's
case,
priced. Yeah.
Both players going to be left with very close to nothing here.
That Seeker the Way could be poised to take this game over. Let's see what Rich finds. Pieces of the puzzle. Well, that's not bad. He'll probably 2 cards in Rodrigo's hand. He'll probably force pitching Misstep, holding Seeker plus pieces of the puzzle. Because that's a pretty potent combination, especially when you just put a 3rd land back on top of your deck. He didn't know about Rodrigo's Wasteland. We'll see which land Rich put back on top. Probably the fetch. Sure enough. So what's your opinion on Seeker of the Way as a Monastery Mentor replacement?
I'm skeptical. I mean, I already mentioned that I didn't even have a great experience with Tarmogoyf, and Seeker of the Way is, you got to work to make it a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
I don't know. A creature that you can have in play for a few turns and then have it die and not be up any resources to show for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a great vintage card.
We've been so spoiled with Monastery Mentor.
Yeah, it does do some things that it's nice to have access to, like, being able to gain life over the course of a really long, drawn-out game. And you do need to win the game with something now that Monastery Mentor is restricted. So,
yeah, well, I am with you. I am skeptical, and I would point out that it helps against Walking Ballista vis-a-vis the damage you just discussed, but it doesn't survive Walking Ballista, but on rare occasions. So I'm skeptical as well. It is a decent threat against Leovold. It's difficult to swing a Leovold into a Seeker of the Way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something. Players traded missteps on this Deathrite Shaman. This Deathrite Shaman is a nice follow-up. Rich has not drawn a castable spell for a few turns. And Rodrigo is now fronting Force of Will or Deathrite activation.
So we have a pretty even board state with Rich waiting to draw lands and Rodrigo waiting to draw spells.
Mm-hmm. Seeker of the Way does have the luxury of swinging straight into Deathrite Shaman, though.
Yep. Rich might have to do a little maneuvering to get the Snapcaster to have full value in the face of Deathrite Shaman.
Exactly. Ooh, now this is one of those situations where I would have been very pleased to draw JVP. But, unfortunately, Rich has another one of those coveted Pyroblasts. They're just so good in this matchup. Rodrigo opts to put JVP into play. Unfortunately, Rich has the optimum answer. But you've got to fight through those Pyroblasts. It just means if he draws Leo next turn, it'll be that much better. However, if Rich can pull a land here, Snapcaster Pyroblast is probably enough to finish this game. Granted, Deathrite Shaman can disrupt that, but time it properly when another Deathrite activation is on the stack, he might still get the value. If you're Rodrigo, I have to believe that you heavily value targeting that Pyroblast with Deathright, but it looks like he's going for life gain. There you go. He exiled his own ramming up Excavator, trying to prolong the game. I wonder how many wasteable lands Rich has left to draw. There's 2 Tundras in his discard pile. I don't know what he's exiled at this point. Well, we're probably about to find out. Oh, there's at least a 3rd Tundra. I hadn't studied the list. Oh, he has 4 Tundras in this list. Okay. This pieces of the puzzle could be enormous. I would expect Rodrigo to force this. My question would be, there you go. Do you use Deathright for mana or do you fetch? And he recognizes, I think, that fetching reduces a turn from the Seeker of the Way clock. So he chooses not to.
He paid a pretty high cost to not reveal that wasteland, as he now has to tap his Deathright Shaman and cast the Force of Will, whereas if he'd played the land, he could have done both.
Yeah, you're right, and I didn't pick up on that at the time, but I'm wondering why he chose not to play that. Rich does have another basic in his deck, a 2nd island. So maybe Rodrigo was hoping to catch Rich fetching a duel again.
Maybe. There's no way he's out of fetchable lands.
No, he's not. Yeah, I was just looking at with respect to the wasteland. Yeah, he had one more fetchable basic.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was actually talking about there's no way. I thought for a moment that Rodrigo could be out of fetchable lands, but I don't think he's gone through that many.
Not based on his graveyard.
He doesn't have a huge number in his deck, but he should still have a few.
He's on 3 Trops, 3 Seas, and a Bayou, so he's got 7 duels in this
That's
deck.
plenty.
Yep. Black Lotus got in for some damage vis-a-vis Seeker of the Way. Oh, and now Snapcaster Pyroblast is online. Rodrigo is going to have to draw, I think, a very specific line to win this game. I'm not even certain that it exists. I was going to say he needs to have non-blue threats, but he's already gone through 2 Excavators, which makes up all of his non-blue threats, aside from Manglehorn, which may or may not still be in, and the 1 Deathright Shaman. Green Sun Zenith is a way to get around that Pyroblast, but only for a moment. Yeah, I think Rodrigo is hard-pressed to find the correct draw this game. And here we have Snapcaster in response to the Deathright activation, ensuring that Rich gets the value out of the Snap, although maybe not exactly the card he would always have chosen, but Brainstorm is still great. And really, Rich just wants the bodies on the table. This Deathright can trade with Snapcaster Mage and gain 2 life during combat. Oh, but Force of Will for the turn is not where Rodrigo wants to be. What's your opinion of Force of Will in this kind of matchup?
It's neither the best nor the worst card. I could see. I will certainly consider sideboarding it out. I haven't, completely mapped out what 60 cards I want for this kind of matchup, but I think it's, it's not as good as like Flusterstorm, for example, but it's a totally passable card when players do have things as powerful as Treasure Cruise or Monastery Mentor, things like that.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. I don't want to draw all 4 of them in a game like this that's so attrition-based, though.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely costly. Yeah. All right, so Rich Shay wins, advances to 2-0. He's mowing through Sultai decks so far tonight. And our next match is actually going to be, we're going to do a full swap of commentators, and Kevin and I are going to do battle, and Rodrigo and Rich are going to be in the booth to show it to you.
All right.
Okay, well, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more vintage action.
Need the latest Magic the Gathering